Hello, I'm Lowell Martin and you are watching MCC Today. Get comfortable, kick your shoes off. I'm not wearing any pants. On today's show, we are lucky enough to have Dr. Lin Hogan, who is a doctor of clinical psychology. You're an adult psychotherapist, and you are a certified advanced drug and alcohol counselor through Weems.
I am.
And you've been there 9 years, and in addition to that, you teach human growth and development in the evenings for us sometimes.
Sure.
And you also teach psychology at Mississippi State University, the Meridian branch.
That's correct.
So you are very busy.
I'm a busy man.
But you like that?
I love it.
Okay, it's all good.
Love helping students.
And you do a lot because, we've talked before about, you send students my way as far as
Sure.
the college study skills and that class. But I wanted to talk to you today primarily about some of your work and through Weems, and because we've got, talking about suicide rates of college students. What do you think are some of the main reasons that we've seen an increase in suicide rates?
I did a lecture recently with college students on suicide rates, and some of the latest research indicates that anywhere from 50 to 90% of college students have some suicidal thoughts at some time or another during their college career. And about 40 to 50% of them will actually create some type of plan, and then some of them actually complete a plan of suicide. And some of the reasons, and we were talking about this and having a discussion with some of the college students the other day, is that they're just under a lot of stress. There's a lot of pressure these days from the economy, from family-related issues, and people are getting into school so they can survive and have a career and make money and have a life, but it's really, really tough out there. And so they carry a lot of weight of stress, and then that can create some mental health conditions such as depression or something like that. Now there's underlying mental health conditions, pre-existing depression, anxiety, or whatever it may be. Then being in a college environment these days can really exacerbate some of those underlying symptoms.
Now, I don't remember when I was in college, it was a long time ago, but I don't remember so many of the problems that we see students have today. Do you think this is just something that's just more recent, or people didn't talk about it?
I do rudimentary research with my students, and I will ask them and poll them each term and ask, for example, how many are working full-time, how many are working at least part-time, how many have families actually are raising kids. And so I'm seeing a big difference from the time that you and I were going to college, where really all I had to do was just go to school.
Yes.
And of course I thought that was pretty stressful. However, these days I'm seeing that a majority of students are having to work full time.
Right.
They might even be on their own, and then of course they might be raising kids. And I really, I try to empathize with them and understand. But that's a lot of pressure.
I tell students all the time, because they come and talk to me a good bit, and I'll say, you don't realize how strong you are. You've already, look at where you are. You know you're here. You're trying to make it better. You're trying to have a better life.
Sure.
And I always tell them, I'm like, just hold on. Just hold on. Don't run for the hills. Just hold on.
Yes.
And this, you can get through this. You can do this. Just do what you do. Go to class. Do your homework. Be
Yes.
on time. The basics. And if you can do that, just keep doing that, and you're going to be okay.
I agree, and I think they need us to help them and to commend them for what they are doing, recognize some of the stressors that they're having, and I'm finding more and more these days, I'm not just an instructor that's delivering curricula and administering tests and things like that, but I'm trying to do a little bit of counseling, if you will. For example, if I see a student that may not be doing well or may have really bombed a test or something, I'll let them know. I say, listen, bombing one test is not the end of your college career, but maybe we can sit down and have a consult and just kind of talk about what's kind of going on in your life. Are you needing some help with some time management or study skills or things like that? And sometimes them just knowing that you're going to kind of be there on that side of them, then that can be very helpful for them.
In addition to the suicide rates, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about the drug and alcohol issues in the area, because I honestly think that we're, they're almost at epidemic proportions.
Yeah.
And I have a family history of drug and alcohol, and I've often wondered, and maybe you can shine a light on this, because my kids growing up, we did not have alcohol or drugs in the house. They did not see any of that, but every one of them have had issues.
Yeah.
I wonder, do you think that there's a hereditary component to, and I'm not saying that you're naturally prone to it, but just somehow there's something that just, I wish I could put a name to it, but as I said, I've often wondered, what was it that kind of pulled them in as far as the drugs and alcohol?
Well, this is what we know about substance use disorders, people that acquire substance use disorders, people that acquire mental health conditions. It comes from two different places, and I tend to answer this question all the time with parents or with the public or when I do presentations, and certainly when I teach these courses. Two places, genetics and environment.
Okay.
So if a child, a student, or an individual has a family history of substance use disorder, they are 50% more likely to develop a substance use disorder themselves, given the right environment. Okay. Now, let's say, for example, there's no pre-existing genetic-based predisposition. Then in the right environment, or under certain conditions, for example, a trauma, sexual assault, childhood sexual molestation, some type of trauma, some of the military people that come back from war zones, or a significant family loss, or some type of trauma that can predispose someone to using drugs. And what we find is that when people use drugs, for example alcohol, they may go out and drink a few beers. If they have some anxiety in their life, they will find that alcohol, ethyl alcohol, can kind of really knock down that anxiety. And they will kind of get that, boy, I feel better. I just don't feel like I'm under as much stress when I have a few beers. What they don't understand at that time, and they really are kind of unknowing, but they will find that the brain is learning that when you get stressed, they're going to send a signal to maybe go drink or use some drugs. Now, drugs and alcohol can be very effective at managing stress for a lot of people, but somewhere along the line, and you mentioned that there's maybe some substance abuse issues in your family, and that's 15 to 20% of the population that experience that, by the way. So it's very common. And somewhere along the way, they will pass that point of no return where they're not just going out and having a few beers or a few drinks or maybe smoking a little bit of weed, but now they're doing it pathologically. They're going from substance use to actual abuse, which means they're using despite negative consequences, and that is a problem. That's a clinical diagnosis.
But aren't there certain, and I've heard this from many, that there are certain drugs that are so strong now that even people who wouldn't normally become addicted become addicted.
You bet. Namely, some of the prescription pain relievers, opioids, that's been the big thing, and I lecture on that all the time. But one of the most prevalent problematic drugs, and I can come back a million times on your show here and talk about methamphetamine. It is truly one of the worst things that a human being can put into their body. It creates significant mental health problems, and it could be just one time. But the way that works neurologically, it affects a chemical called dopamine. And dopamine is responsible for survival. And so when someone's doing methamphetamine or any type of substance that elevates dopamine, it literally tricks that individual into thinking that they need that to survive. It is an amazing phenomenon.
And I've also known people who use methamphetamines. And is Adderall? What is Adderall?
Adderall is a psychostimulant. It is an amphetamine.
Okay, because I know people who will say they want to get Adderall because they want to lose weight.
That's true. Yeah. So,
and they want to use that Adderall to and they try to get something to keep them pumped up.
Right, and that's an illicit use of that particular drug. That's a federally regulated prescription medication that should only be prescribed by a physician, nurse practitioner, whomever, for ADHD, and then there's some other off-label type of diagnoses that prescribers will use Adderall for, and other psychostimulants.
What do you think, if you've got a child or someone in your care who is becoming or is an addict, what do families do? What can we do? That
is the $60,000 question. At one time, I'll tell you, years ago, and I've been doing this about 25 years now, working with substance abusers and all that, and always the families want to know, and they are distressed. They are just heartened. They are slowly watching their loved one commit suicide just a little at a time. It is really one of the worst things that a family member or a loved one could ever experience, because they don't know what to do. So they'll come to me, and I'll be honest with you, we have a lot of therapeutic modalities and a lot of suggestions and things like that, but when someone is 18 or older, they can kind of do what they want to. So what I used to do is I used to tell the family member, I'd say, you know what, statistically, if we put them in treatment, or if we do this, or send them to AA or NA or some type of support or spiritual help or something like that, you know, then we kind of give them a chance and work with them and be loving, care, compassion. Well, I was finding a lot of those people that was kind of what I call soft-selling the solution, their loved ones were dying because substance use disorder kills people all the time. And so what I'm saying these days is I would recommend that you drag them kicking and screaming into a treatment center. And err on the side of safety for that individual, because these days the drugs are extremely dangerous and very strong, and people are accidentally overdosing all the time.
Do you think, and I've heard this before too, that unless they're ready, that it won't take? You know, if they go to a treatment, and I'm with you, kicking and screaming, and you know, having an intervention and trying to get them there, but until they're ready. Is that true? Do you think that's true?
Yeah, let me address that. It is a myth to think that somebody has to hit rock bottom before they can get some help. You know, imagine if you had a heart condition and you went to a cardiologist, and the cardiologist said, well, I need you to have a heart attack before I treat you. That doesn't make sense, does it?
No.
So we want to, when we recognize that somebody has a substance abuse issue, and it's not really hard to figure that out. Call me if you have any questions about how that works. There's lots of different ways you can find that out. Let's not wait till they hit bottom, because for a substance abuser, rock bottom is death. So we want to intervene at whatever level they may be at. Now, like you said, it's advantageous for someone that wants to get help. That always seems to work a little bit better. There tends to be some intrinsic motivation, and that tends to work better. However, we also know that if somebody is mandated, let's say court ordered to go to treatment, we have found that there's a statistically significant number of those people that are there at that treatment facility, and they say, you know what, I think I can do this. I didn't want to be here, but I see that maybe I can live clean and sober. I'm kind of, you know, resonating with some of these other people. I see I'm not alone. I see I can get some help. They start to feel better, and that can take also.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, listen, we're out of time, but I want to have you back on the show, and I really want to devote a whole show to this, because I really think these are some issues that we need to talk about. Because as I said, I found myself in my family literally wondering what to do.
Sure.
Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate you. All right.
We'll be right back.
Find purpose and soar to new heights at Meridian Community College. Elevate your education through our 52 career technical programs and find the eagle in you. With tuition guarantee and university transfer programs, your education is within reach. Find potential with more than 30 campus clubs and organizations, and let your eagle spirit thrive. Invest in your education and register today. Meridian Community College. Find your wings.
Today we have a special treat for you. We have Miss Diane Reynolds and we have Miss Kay O'Shaughnessy. Now, Miss Reynolds, you were a teacher at Northwest Junior High for 30 years, retired from that. Then you decided to go to Mississippi State and be the supervisor of teaching the Meridian branch of Mississippi State, and I've heard that you're retired from that.
Yes.
Okay. Are we happily retired from that?
Happily retired.
And then Miss O'Shaughnessy, you are work with the Meridian Symphony Association.
That's correct.
Which is the umbrella organization for the Meridian Symphony Orchestra, the choir, and everything else associated.
All of those things about paying the orchestra, getting them here, getting all the guest artists here. I work in an administrative assistant capacity.
Okay.
We have a new executive director.
How long have you been doing that, if you don't mind me asking?
I was on the board for 4 years, and now I've been working for 6, almost 7 years in this capacity.
Okay.
Your new Arts and Letters, Susie Johnson, was
Yes.
the former executive director of the Symphony, and she's now here,
Right.
which is one of the reasons that Diane and I are here, but at her request. But Cara Purvis is now the new executive director of the Meridian Symphony, so I work very closely with her.
You know, and people are constantly amazed at the quality of music that we have here in Meridian, in this area. You know, anytime they hear the orchestra, it's just absolutely amazing. You know, Susie is doing an amazing job directing some of these plays. We just had Frozen Junior, and I've heard nothing but great things about that. Just this whole notion of the arts in our area. It's, you know, we have so much available.
We really do. And just a little anecdotal thing, I moved away, got married in the 70s, left here after college, after I taught at Northwest for a year.
Okay.
And when I came back 35 years later, I thought, what am I going to do? I've been at all these big cities like in San Francisco and New York, and wonderful even movies and things to just go see. And then I met some people who were involved with the Meridian Symphony Chorus at that time. At that time, it was actually the MCC Community Choir course under Dr. Bob Hermans.
Yes.
That was my entree into all the wonderful things that Meridian has to offer. I mean, I remember the Meridian Little Theater, but being able to sing with the chorus, and then going from working on the board, and my first event with the board was having Itzhak Perlman here for our 50th anniversary, and we're coming up on the 60th. But we have an incredible jewel here with the Symphony Orchestra and Arts and Letters. It just is a really great marriage.
And
I mean,
think
I'm
it's
doing this, but
it's comparable to, you know, what you find in
really
many
is
of
large
these
cities.
Yes,
Exactly.
it really
We
is.
have-
Because I remember at that age, you know, the first thing you wanted to do was get out of Meridian.
absolutely.
The first
That's
thing,
what I
every
thought.
one of my
I'm
high
going to
school,
get
it's
married,
like,
and I
get
left,
out.
and
every
I
one of
didn't.
us, we're all back.
Now I'm so glad
We're
to
all
be
back.
back because this opportunity to have these two authors that are coming for
Yes.
MCC, which is why we're here today.
Yes. So we
A
have
week
next,
from Thursday.
yes,
yeah.
on March 5th
Right.
at 7 p.m. in the McCain Theater.
Right.
We have, and it is called A Penchant for Suspense, I
Exactly.
believe. And we have the authors. Who are the authors? We have
John Floyd.
Mr. John Floyd
And Lori Parker.
and Lori Parker. And these are Mississippi authors.
Yes.
Yes.
And they have each written quite a bit.
Yes. Yes. Let me tell you about
Yes,
John
please,
Floyd.
please.
These are just 3 of his books that I purchased. The Barons,
Okay.
50 Mysteries, which is a really fun book,
Okay.
and then Dreamland. They're short stories, and he's a short story writer. I met him at Books A Million one time. He was signing books, and you know, I went in and I said, "Oh, I'm not a short story reader. I read novels. I love Trollope. I like the long novels." He said, "Well, just read one of these stories." So I took Dreamland and I read the first story. I was blown away. But he has published more books than this. He's published in all kinds of mystery magazines.
Right.
The Strand is one we have in Meridian. I saw it at Books A Million.
Right.
That he publishes work in. So
Didn't
And
you
the
say,
Saturday Evening
I was about to
Post.
say,
Yeah.
you had said that he has been
Yes.
published in the Saturday Evening Post as
Many
well.
times,
Okay.
yes.
And then Miss Parker, Lori
Miss
Parker.
Parker is probably most well known for her Everywhere in Mississippi.
Okay.
It's in rhyme. It mentions every single town in Mississippi because of her lost dog, Skippy.
Okay.
But after several years of, she's written tons of books, and she just recently, I think probably back in the early 2000s,
Okay.
she began publishing her novels. This is her most recent one, Gently Scattered Intentions.
Okay.
Each of her novels has been set in a Mississippi town. She is originally from Starkville. She started out as a teacher at Starkville, graduated from Mississippi State, and then combines her love of crafting. She's a member of the Mississippi Guild of Artists. I don't think I said that right, but anyway, all of these illustrations in Everywhere in Mississippi are her collage work,
Okay.
where she puts these together. And some of her books are self-published, but they're all available on Amazon.
Okay.
Now her book is
this
am I
one
right, Kay? Hush, Swing, Hush.
is
I
set
think
here.
it's set in Meridian.
It
I've
is.
read that.
Oh, really? Did you like it?
Yes,
Yes.
excellent.
So
yeah.
we had called this, we've got, because each of these novels, each of these writers create an atmosphere of suspense. They do emphasize character, but they also have a nice little plot that moves right along. So we've got a plot, and there is some suspense in it, and there's usually a twist. Both of them are very good at those ironic
Completely unexpected.
twists.
Yes,
Okay,
exactly.
but still logical.
Oh yes.
Logical, but completely
great
unexpected.
foreshadowing. Let's put
Really?
it that way.
Okay, I cannot wait because you're going to let me.
I'm
we're
gonna let you keep these.
Yes, yes.
And I would like to keep this, but it is a signed copy and belongs to my cousin. And I loaned mine
So I
out, and I
cannot have
think I
that.
loaned it to Susie, and she may be reading it right now.
Okay.
But she's, I think she's honing her craft. I
Good.
think she's doing a
Good.
really good job. Both of these authors are not as well known as, say, like John Grisham or Richard Grant,
listen,
but
John-
they are
John
so.
Grisham
and Tom
and-
Franklin that
and-
wrote Crooked Letter.
Right, right.
Michael Connolly, David Baldacci, they are published in some of these same magazines that John Boyd is published
Yes. Okay. Wow.
in. So
They're
I think
up
they're
there.
good.
Okay. Now, what do you think we can do? Because I notice this in my classes all the time. And in fact, in my class on Tuesday, I said, okay, we were talking about how to read textbooks. And I said, how many of you do not like to read? And over half the class raised their
Oh.
hands. And, because I tell them, I'm like, if you don't like to read, if you don't like to read normally, then when you get into a very technical class, you're going to have trouble. And typically people who don't like to read, their reading speed and reading comprehension is not as good as people who like to read. I love to read. That is my way of escaping.
Me too.
That it always has been, and so I'm very fast at it, and I comprehend very quickly. What can we do you think? And you've had a huge amount of experience with students and director of teaching. What can we do to?
I think one thing we can do is have kids read things that they will like.
Okay.
Do you remember the writer Larry Brown, a Mississippi writer who died from Oxford?
Yes.
He told this story that when he was in high school, he wanted to write a research paper on something like hunting or something, and the English teacher wouldn't let him. It wasn't literary enough. And so I think that's one thing we can do is to let people read in an area where they're passionate.
I agree. I think when I was teaching in a middle school, what it would be called now, but it was a 7th and 8th grade class in Norfolk, Virginia, at a school that was in the inner city, a part of Norfolk. And these children all had dreams of being basketball players and making it out. And at that time, there was the ABA, and there were some great players that went, Julius Erving, that went on to play. And those children, and I used to bring my husband's Sports Illustrateds in and hand them out because they would read, and it was some good writing.
Oh, yes.
Dan Ford,
Yes.
one of the writers for that. So the one big mistake I made was trying to get them to read O. Henry's The Ransom of Red Chief. It's just not in today. I mean, I read that in 8th grade, thought it was hysterical.
Sure.
This had nothing. So I think what she said is about what they're interested in. But another thing I found is that I used to read aloud from The Outsiders to my 7th graders. I had a class that was right before lunch, and the bell would ring, but I would take that 7 minutes and read maybe a portion of a chapter, and we read that whole thing in a 9 weeks period. So I think reading aloud, if parents can do that early with their children, that instills this two things, that the parents like to read and they are going to do that. The other thing is I would suggest making them read things out loud, because then you have to think about what you're saying.
Right.
I don't know whether that's where, I don't have any kind of
Sure.
studies or thing to do that, but a lot of times when I'm struggling with a passage, technical, I stop and go back and reread it aloud instead of just reading it to myself.
And I also think that parents should make their kids read. And I found, this is what I found, because I taught 9th and 10th grade English. And, you know, not only are we dealing with hormones because, you know, oh my gosh, but, yeah, and I remember in some of the education classes I had at that time, they're like, well, what do they feel like doing? Well, if they feel like doing this, and I'm like, they're not going to feel like reading. So I said, you're going to read. So make sure you read it.
But something they like.
But so I have no problem with that. But make them read a certain amount of time.
And
every
I
week.
also
and hopefully
think
they'll find something that they like. Yes.
that often what curriculum says is a must-read, like The Heart of Darkness, I remember having to read. Often children don't have the life experiences to really understand some of the themes that are great themes, but they haven't experienced any of that, and it's the unusual child right now who would be able to comprehend some of these life experiences that are presented, even like, what was the one, Red Badge of Courage.
Yes.
All of those things, you know, we may introduce them. They're difficult to read, so I think that is one of the things that we do to turn off reading. I think there are things that we definitely need. If you're going to have a classical education, I think there's some things that you just need to have in your back pocket that you have read. You know.
Listen, we're running out of time, but before we leave, I want you to show the poster that you brought with you, and to show it to this.
Well,
okay.
Because I'm doing an unabashed plug for the Meridian Symphony. The weekend, if you come to the Arts and Letters things at the Auditorium in McCain Theater for We've Got a Plot, a penchant for suspense, then book the rest of that weekend and come out on Saturday, March the 7th for the Best of Broadway. Okay. All of the performers in this are from Mississippi. It will be excerpts from major Broadway musicals, West Side Story, Oklahoma. Excellent. You will know all the tunes, with the exception of maybe Ragtime, but it's a gorgeous thing.
So that's next
this
weekend.
Is next weekend, Saturday, March the 7th. There's a backstage pass. Your ticket is your admittance to a pre-concert party in the grand lobby of the Riley Center, and then this comes on immediately following at 7. Tickets are available at the Riley Center box office.
Thank you so much. And then next Thursday, or on March the 5th, we have the Penchant for Suspense here in the McCain Theater at 7 o'clock.
And these two writers will be here.
These two writers will be here answering
Theater,
questions.
7 o'clock.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank y'all so much. I want you back on the show.
Oh, it was so much fun. Thank you, Lord.
We'll be right back.
Are you looking for better health and fitness? Meridian Community College is offering wellness and fitness classes to students and the community. Located in our Damon Fitness Center, we offer classes such as swimming, yoga, weight training, spin, Zumba, and many more. Students can also receive academic credit for enrolling. For more information, call 601-484-8763. Find your wings at Meridian Community College.
On behalf of Matt Milner, our executive producer, Josh Taylor, our media consultant, and Josiah Goss, our student producer, I want to thank you for watching today's show. Hope you learned something and hope we brought your blood pressure down.